This is the ballad of a guy named Jackalope Jim. He was the West's quickest draw, and no one could beat him. At the tender age of 10, he lost his ma and pa. So with a gifted metal arm, became a man of law.
Hey everybody, this is Russ the Big Guy, and this is another exciting adventure here with Jackalope Junction TV. As I said, my name is Russ the Big Guy. I'm a board member and co-conspirator with Greg Shumsky. He's the founder and visionary behind Jackalope Junction and the CEO of Acorn Entertainment Group Incorporated, a transmedia storytelling and themed entertainment design company. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Russ.
You're very welcome.
You're bored? Why are you bored? You're a board member. We should do something so you're not so bored.
I'm not bored. Trust me. I am not bored. I'm really looking forward to moving though. I've got a lot going on here, but I'm going to miss a lot, but I'm very excited to get going on some stuff here.
Time for new horizons.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about the Gurdys today. The Gurdys are goats.
Billy goats.
Yeah. So we were talking before we started recording that what I've been trying to do, and you as well, is to kind of connect some of the Acorn Entertainment Group values and how maybe a mission statement might connect to what we're doing with the different characters and whatnot. And so the Gurdys they've kind of failed in this area. They're not living any of these values really. They've been overcome by grief and have let the negative forces in the world kind of dictate their life, and so they're kind of an example of what not to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Gurdys. So originally the idea behind the Gurdys was when I started developing the idea for the park, they were kind of a visual story joke animatronics on the back porch of the gym. So the idea is that they run the general store. Now the name Gurdy comes from Grundy from the movie So Dear to My Heart, which if people have not seen the Disney film So Dear to My Heart, I highly recommend it. You have to find it on Apple TV or somewhere else that's pay-per-view. You can't. It's one of the movies of so many classic films that are not on Disney Plus, even though it was Walt's favorite movie, believe it or not, or so I've been told by a few dozen people.
Yeah.
So I watched it, and that kind of was some inspiration for parts of Jackalope Junction. And there's Mr. Grundy who owns the general store, and I accidentally said I wrote down Gurdy, and I thought, well, that sticks. And I had this story that you have Ma and Pa Gurdy sitting on the back porch. Well, so Steve, one of my colleagues, a friend, had recommended that we do him as Billy Goat sitting on the porch, and Ma Gurdy is whittling, and Pa Gurdy's playing the fiddle, and his fiddling is so bad that she's whittling so much wood that it's piling up around him. So the idea is that she now whittles because she creates wooden toys for children that will be in the store next door. It's going to be a little toy emporium next to the general store. So that was all fine and dandy. And then as the stories started to develop as far as Jackalope Junction and the mine cave tragedy, I thought, well, why is Pa playing the fiddle so horribly? Why is he so bad at the fiddle? Why is Ma always just whittling? And I came across the idea that, well, they lost something. And what did they lose? And they lost, it turns out they lost their children, their young son and daughter. And their son and daughter were playing in the mine caves, exploring the mine caves when the big mine cave-in happened, and they were lost with 11 miners. So it gives us 13 people that were lost. So Pa Gurdy and Ma Gurdy could never get over it. Now, Pa Gurdy, before all this, 20 years earlier, when his kids were still around, when they had their children, he was a really happy-go-lucky he was just a fun guy, great neighbor, played beautiful music, just happy music on his fiddle all the time. love to play at Paula Pig's house, and they do line dancing, and they do hoedowns and the whole 9 yards, and he would even be the caller for score dancing, right? That's who he was. He loved the community. He loved contributing to the community. He worked hard at the store. He'd spend hours afterwards working at people's houses, helping them fix stuff. He was a really giving sort of person. And Ma Gurdy loved making wooden toys for her children. And then she would also make extras to sell at their store, at the toy store next door. So, short story long, cave-in happens. The children are lost. And Ma and Pa Gurdy just can't get over it. Other people lost loved ones. Paula Pig did, which we'll talk about later. Senior Mole feels responsible for the cave-in, et cetera, et cetera. And Ma and Pa Gurdy were these happy-go-lucky people, just lovely, neighborly, kind, giving. And then when their children were lost in the mine caves after the big cave-in, they couldn't get over it. Their children were their life. And Ma Gurdy, and she would make the toys still for the children in the town to try and get some joy out of it. She didn't want to stop making toys, but she was hoping her kids would come back, and she would continue to make toys, and she'd start making a lot of toys. Around the clock, she'd make toys, lots of them, to give away, sell, and hopefully piling them up in the house, hoping that her children, her son and daughter, would come back. So that's what happened to her. It was her way of coping with the loss. And we're now 20 years later, and they're still like that. 20 years later, they still are ruined more or less by the loss of their children. Pa Gurdy, who was this fun-loving, happy, great sense of humor, jokester, helper, handyman, just gave his heart and soul to the community, became a bitter, sour, I wouldn't say terrible person, but just not, he just became, get off my lawn, hey kids, get off my lawn type of guy. And he'd play his fiddle, but it was nothing but sad music or out of tune. And he'd play it all the time because he could not stop missing his kids, obviously. And he could never get past it. They held a candle, they held that hope that their children would return someday. But 20 years later, they still had, obviously, and they never found them. And it greatly affected both of them because they put so much of their lives around not just the community, but their children. Their children were their heart and soul.
Yeah.
And the characters came from the fact that my wife and I have a son and a daughter. And I wonder how I would react to the loss of my children. If I lost both my kids, how would I adapt? Would I turn into Pa Gurdy? I might. Or would I eventually get past it? I'd like to think I would, but I don't know if I would. That's the hardest. They're the hardest ones to talk about for me as a dad. And when I go back and when I talk about how Jackalope Junction is multi-generational, it's not just for kids. It's for everyone. We want to be able to touch the lives of parents that may have lost a child. And how do they deal with it? Or how do you do with it? Maybe in the show, sometimes what we'll do is at the end of the show, we'll interview people, real people that have experienced something that we talk about in the show.
There's a lot of people have experienced loss, and not everyone has come out positively or health, have become healthy.
Well, we want to focus on having people on the show afterwards that have come out positively, and how do they do it? That may help others.
Yeah.
The show is really about how are we going to help people deal with life, from our stories, and from then maybe talking to people that have really, I think it's a great idea, because you don't have any shows that really talk about that. At the end of a show, you watch a show that's kind of funny and kind of dramatic and so on and so forth. Okay, let's talk to people that this has really happened to.
Well, there's also a really good impact on people when they see or are exposed to someone else's trauma or someone else's disaster. It really can make you stop and think and re-examine how one is living one's life, right? Especially if you maybe have kids and you're spending too much time at work, or not,
Right.
Maybe there's something else that's taking you away, whether it's
Work,
drugs or alcohol or work, or something else, or
well,
there's a
I
list.
think that's a mistake. I think that's something we as parents, all of us in general, do. We work so we put a roof over their heads. We have food on the table. We don't want to lose our jobs. So when our bosses, our higher ups will that we want to impress them. We work longer hours. We don't want to lose a job. We want to get promoted, et cetera, et cetera. And we do that at the sacrifice of our children. Well, what happens if your children, what if you lose the thing you're fighting so hard to take care of?
Right.
What if you lose that? And we all go back and look back.
I can relate a short story here that just happened to me today. So I have been spending time around my grandson because I'm doing some work at my daughter's home, doing some renovations, and I try to have him participate as much as possible. Now he's only 2 right now. Well, he's almost 3, but he's still, a couple more months he'll be 3. But he loves tools. He loves to fix things. He loves to measure things. He loves to drill holes and hammer nails, and none of which he can do very well, but he tries, and he has his own toolbox and his own tools, play tools and real tools. We've been spending so much time together that when I left today, the poor kid had a meltdown because all he wanted. Now I just said he has all these tools and everything, but he doesn't. And as much as he loves those, all he really wanted was just, he wanted to come home with me. He wanted to spend more time with me.
That's my baby right there. That's our current brat.
Your dog is the same way. Just wants more attention from your daughter who left.
Right. He's such a whiny baby. This is Oliver. Hey, hi, Oliver. Who's this right here? That's Russell. That's Russ in the audience. The funny thing about boxers is when they get older, they become very attentive to your emotions. And when you're sad, they will come and comfort you. A character I would love to develop would be based on a boxer, like Doc Boxer, I'm thinking. He's our first boxer we had that we got as a puppy, and the other 2 we had before were rescues. So it's hard being a parent.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the Gurdys may overcome that someday. We don't know. I part of me says they will, but we don't know when. And but I don't want every character in the park to have become, or in the story to have overcome something, and life is good and moving on. I want to have people that are struggling, right? Just like real life. This is real life, and these characters reflect very much a lot of us and what we're going through in real life. I don't want to be. There's not going to be any candy coating, and I don't know if people are ready for that, but I think that's what we need to do.
Well, it's still going to be entertainment first, so
sure, right. Yep.
So I think we covered the Gurdys, and then do you want to talk at all about the Gurdys General Store as it will exist?
The general store, it's just a regular general store. It'll have candies, it'll have sundries. Guests can come through and buy little things they'd find in a general store. There'll be a little wine barrel or whatever with a checkerboard on top if you want to sit down and play a game of checkers. Maybe
barrel, giant pickle barrel or something.
Pickle barrel, yeah, right, yeah. So,
So, will the Gurdys be there?
Yes, they
interact
will.
with. Okay.
They're actually going to be they'll be on their back porch. So as the train comes around the back of town, you'll see them on their back porch.
Yeah.
playing the fiddle and Ma whittling. So you'll run across a few characters, including the mayor of the town, welcoming you back into town, with his hand in the honey pot, because he's a bear, and there's the whole joke about him being a politician with his hand stuck in the honey pot.
Interesting. That's it. I think we covered the Gurdys, and that was episode 11. All right, this is Russ and Greg, and thanks for tuning in. See us again next week for episode 12. Do we know what we're talking about next week, Greg?
All a pig.
All a pig. All right. All a pig. All right. Have a good one.